Welcome to Series 1 of Pod Talks. Thank you for joining us today. We've got another episode to share with you. So, as always, I've got my trusted lieutenant in Mr. Tom Davies.
Hello again, it's great to be back.
And how are you today, Tom?
Oh, I'm very well indeed, feeling powerful.
Excellent. And how's your work life, personal life been since we last met?
It's gone from strength to strength. Thank you, Graham, for asking. We're still running Kit McGrath education centres in the north of England and having a thoroughly good time while we're going about it.
Fantastic. So you've got an educator in the room, and in particular our factoid mathematician. So we'll come back on to Mr. Davies shortly to talk about our factoids. However, and more importantly, no doubt, is a very warm welcome to our lovely guest today, who is Grace Henebry.
Thank you very much. Hello, good afternoon.
And how are you today, Grace?
Very well, thank you for asking.
Excellent. What did you get up to this morning? Anything interesting?
I went spinning actually this morning, so feeling all nice and refreshed, ready to take on the week.
I like it. That puts me and Tom to shame because Grace is keeping herself fit and healthy, which is what we try and do. Right?
We do try.
We do try. It doesn't always work. Thank you, Grace, and we'll talk more about Grace shortly and what she does and what her journey has been from a people organisation development perspective. She's got some interesting angles and certainly an interesting perspective to come from. But as always, and I know you're waiting for this and you're looking forward to it, we're going to start our first section of factoids with Mr. Tom Davies. For this month, he's got some new factoids to share with us from a people organisation development perspective.
Here we go, buckle up. This week we're looking at profits and productivity, so two reasons to take notice. Firstly, companies that offer comprehensive training programs have a 218% higher income per employee than companies without formalised training. But it doesn't stop there.
Sense.
Okay.
It does make. I believe that does make sense. I mean, 218%. That's quite some figure. But these companies also enjoy a 24% higher profit margin than those who spend less on training. So it would seem that continue to invest in training and development, even when there is economic downturns, is the smart play.
Yeah.
So again, startling. The numbers a bit higher than I thought they might be. The idea behind that, well, that stacks up. And lastly, I would say, I suppose, while we're going through these percentages, if you're considering whether to invest in new equipment or whether to invest or hold on a bit longer, the PCs are still functioning, should we put that money into training? Well, going to a study conducted by the National Centre on the Educational Quality of the Workforce, increasing workforce education level were far more effective at increasing productivity than increases in the value of the equipment. A 10% increase in both produced a productivity gain of 8.6% for education versus a mere 3.4% increase for upgraded equipment.
Wow. And that makes sense to you, listening to that from a business leader perspective?
Absolutely, I truly believe that as not only as like a normal individual, but working in the workplace, I think that learning is a daily journey for all of us. To have that sense of purpose, it's basically just a given to evolve, and we have to keep on learning. And if your workplace is providing time and commitment in your development, I think definitely that it would drive not only the results forward, but would also mean retaining you as their employee in terms of the long-term outlook.
Which is cheaper.
Yes,
cheaper
absolutely.
for business and better for morale.
Yes,
and such.
yes.
And also what you pick up there is really interesting, isn't it, from a purpose perspective, which we'll talk more about. So you've clearly seen that in the workplace with individuals, and that's a really important point. Just back to that 214%, did you say?
218, yeah.
218. So phenomenal statistics, and it makes total sense to me that actually the more you invest in your people, the more that your business will grow and develop, and it's an indirect way of being profitable, isn't it, in some respects? So it's a new way of sales and marketing as we know it, but it's sort of underground, it's non-tangible, which is why people might be put off by going down that path. But through your research, was there anything in there that suggested what were the factors of why the teams or organisations were more productive? Was there any research to suggest what it was down because people feel more confident or they're a lot clearer on what's expected of them? Did you find anything like that?
No, again, it's just a number. This just if we jump back to what Simon Shepard was saying, this is more what I think might be the case. It may be the difference between that expectation and that support function that's in there, and the narrower that gap, surely the more productive and more profitable an employee is going to be. And I guess one of the
But why is it then that organisations don't all see that if the numbers are there, statistics are quite clear? Why is it that not every organisation doing it, and we have this huge scenario that we're trying to get people to perform better?
It's unusual to be able to put a number to that. I mean, these studies have started to do that, but I could talk about the processing power of my PC, which is far more easy to recognise at a glance. Oh, we'll upgrade those, the computers will run more quickly. But with kind of a training course, that value is harder to make tangible, would be my...
And that's...
Could I just jump in?
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
because also companies probably are looking at the costs, right? Training equals costs. And maybe some of them are still burying their heads in the sand that this is not the direction that the company is willing to go through. And then you have, you know, successful companies who have really invested in their people, and you could see it, you know, they have like these employees that really thrive on learning every day.
And if I can jump in there, Grace, we were talking before we started the podcast about your role, and we'll hear more about that later at Hilton, and they've got an incredible track record of helping people develop. I know they're ranked as #1 by the Times as somewhere to work, which I can believe.
Indeed, yes.
I'd just like to revisit kind of what's in place at Hilton to help people develop.
With Hilton, as we all know, we have about more than 5,000 hotels worldwide. And actually we were voted, or we have won #1 workplace on 2019 Fortune top 100 best companies to work for. So it is quite an achievement. But back to your question, we have what we call a Hilton University, and this is basically for everyone, for all the employees, for all the leadership to avail of. So you can actually either have a classroom-based training or instructor-led, or just e-learnings that you can do in your own spare time. Equally, we also have partnered with lynda.com, which are now actually under the umbrella of LinkedIn. So again, you can go in there as a Hilton employee, and you can access a wide array of different trainings. I mean, it could be anything, as it's not only hospitality courses, you know, customer service or something like this, but you could also look at even how can I do something like project management or accountancy or finance. So it's really fascinating. Hilton has really invested.
It gives you that platform and vehicle to decide what to do. That's
absolutely, and it's very exciting. You are really the master of your own time and your own development. And we are encouraged to really avail of this incredible benefit.
So Grace is telling us about a fantastic experience, and we'll come more back into the Hilton thing very shortly, but I just want to go back to what we were talking, which led us from the stats as well, which is, so what's the reason why some businesses do it so well, some businesses don't do it at all, and some businesses make an effort? What I'm trying to look at what's going on, and is it because, back to your point, is it because then businesses, let's focus in on them, that are not doing it at all? Is it because they think that it's not tangible, so I can't measure it, therefore I'm not even going to bother? I'd rather get some equipment which I can calculate it's going to cost this, and I'm going to get a return time on task over them years. I mean, which one do we think it is? Or do we have experiences to help us understand that, you know, there's a real good mathematical equation here to make money for the business through people, but there's still that barrier, I guess, when people make a decision to go down that path.
I think it's hard to quantify the training for a small business. Certainly, I can only talk about really, I suppose, my experience. It took me a while to come to grips with realising, and I was starting from teaching into small business, very inexperienced in that. I mean, that's why I paid to join a franchise, which has been really useful. And over time, I realised the marketing was essential, even though I didn't know which part of the marketing was working. If I was handing over £5 notes and they were giving me £10 notes, I should be standing there all day. And it's the same with good training, I'd imagine, but I'm sure Grace might be able to give a bit more maybe of a steer on when training's gone well for your team, Grace, maybe when you've really felt that something you've done through the development process.
Yes.
You've seen that in the workplace, or maybe.
Of course.
Yeah.
Where I work in Hilton, we are basically in revenue management. So that would basically mean we look after the pricing, we look at the rooms availability or the forecast and the budgets. So we look as well at the profitability of all the strategic decisions that we make every day. But in terms of working within a team and where training comes in is, I think it's crucial to identify what are the gaps. Okay, what is it that is making us not deliver 110% as we would like to? And then I think it's really important to have a chat with your team members and see where are we failing, or where do you feel we could do better? How can we support you? Where can we find time for you? So I think once you have that conversation, we normally capture this during the start of the year, when we basically map out how would they like their year to look like in terms of their career development plan. So then we start from there, and if they feel that they're struggling in terms of communicating with their stakeholders, they're finding it difficult to influence them in terms of what are the big decisions to be made throughout the year. So then we have a conversation of, okay, so is it communication? Then maybe we could then sign you up to either a classroom-based training about influencing, about negotiating or managing conflicts. How do we even push this communication piece one step forward? Is it about having those conversations over the phone? Is it written via email? Is it how you present your thoughts across?
Interesting. So from your perspective, what you're talking about is how you're trying to close the gap between people performance and actually meeting the organisational objectives.
Yes.
And that's quite a profound thing to hear, because what you're saying is you're considering that it's all good and well to have organisational objectives, but unless you consider how you're going to support or get your people to align with that, then you're stacking up problems for yourself, and maybe that helps.
Absolutely.
Helps us understand a bit about why organisations might not want to go into that.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be professional as well, right? As I said, you're the master of your own career destiny. May it be a personal development, then you should also have these conversations with your team member.
Which leads me nicely, Grace, into, and we've gone into a lot of depth there, which is fantastic, and we'll come back into that.
Yeah.
So we've got some other questions to go into, particularly your role and what you're doing and your experiences. But I think now's a really good time to go back into a little bit about you for our audience, for our viewers, for you to share a little bit about your personal and professional backgrounds, how your journey started to where you are today. If you could just give us a flavour about that, and then obviously we'll get back into our questions, go a bit deeper on your journey, in particular what you do now. So yeah.
So it's like jumping into a hot tub time machine then, right?
It is. So I'm assuming you've seen that. If not, hot time. Yeah, you've seen it, Davis. I would have expected you to have seen that.
In your house.
All right. Okay. Good. Yeah, that was it then. So
superb. So I am from the Philippines. I basically went to Japan at the age of 19 to study Japanese for a full year. That was a very interesting time, and then I also studied hotel management while I was there, which then brought me to my journey in Dublin, Ireland. Where one of the highlights when I lived there for 10 years is I worked for a really beautiful 5-star hotel called the Shelbourne.
Which is amazing. If those haven't been, it's fantastic.
It's beautiful. It's a landmark hotel in Dublin. It's really steeped in history, and actually the 1921 Constitution was actually drafted in the Constitution Room. And then I moved here to England about 6 years ago. So throughout my journey, when I left home at 19, it's always been working with hotels. I have the hotelier blood coursing through my veins. Yeah.
Absolutely, and just to thank as well Davies for his factoids there, a legend as always, which triggered that whole conversation, and it's really insightful to hear them statistics, isn't it? Some good research to back up if an organisation is trying to improve for its people. But what an amazing background you've got, Grace, and obviously you speak several languages. Obviously Japanese is one of them. You've spent a long time in your career going through the whole process of all levels within business. So let's get into the nitty gritty now of what you're doing now, and think about from a personal, professional perspective how you've got from A to B. So I guess the first question from us is along the lines of what would you say has been your personal and professional career highlights, and why?
I think for me, the personal highlight was definitely winning that scholarship from the Japanese government to study in Japan for 3 years, because I had no knowledge of the Japanese language. We basically immersed ourselves for the full year, 8 hours every day, studying, learning Japanese. So by the end of that 1 year education, I was able to read, write, speak Japanese, and to be able to write and read about 3,000 Japanese characters in that small period of time, I think was quite a personal highlight.
And just on that, what sort of skills did you need to get yourself through that? Because it's a very different way of learning in Japan compared to other countries.
Yes, thank you. I think at a very young age of 19, when you leave home for the first time, it can be quite daunting. I think what helped me then was self-belief, and just, I think it was the self-belief and also the dedication to learn and to have that end goal in mind helped.
And are you still fluent in Japanese now?
I wish I could say yes, but I think if you put me there again for another 3 months, I would pick it up again.
Fantastic. So self-belief was your driver. Hard work, I guess, as well.
Yes,
because
of course.
The hours and time you had to put into it, and you achieved through
Absolutely.
self-belief, hard work. So that's a personal thing, and I think that sounds amazing. From a professional side then, what's been your career highlights over that time from start to where you are now?
I think, as I said, in my time in Dublin and here as well in England, I have been very lucky to work for two of the biggest, if not, how do I say this, biggest hotel companies in the world, like Marriott and Hilton. And also the learnings that I've had working with these two companies, not only as an individual but as a leader.
Fantastic. And from a learning's point of view then, in your mind, could you capture and summarise what sort of things you've learned to help you get to where you are? Because obviously to work for them two massive international organisations in a variety of roles, which we'll come on to in a minute with Tom's questioning, but what was the learnings for you from that to now?
I think when you work for hotels, it's really all about the people, right? It's all about, we're there because we truly care about the people. And I think what I've really learned from it is your relationships, not only with your employees, with your guests, but also with your bosses. And it's also being able to communicate very well in terms of being able to listen and to actually share your thoughts effectively. And I think lastly as well, what I've learned is really you make your own luck, right? Hard work goes in there, the long hours are in there, but it's about having that self-resilience and really believing that you can achieve things when you put your heart and mind into it.
And the relationship piece, that's really interesting to hear, isn't it? Because we're all different, we've all got different upbringings, backgrounds, beliefs, values, we have a different frame of reference on how we tap into things. So to be able to relate to others is quite a skill, isn't it? Because sometimes we're quite lazy and we don't really want to tap into different things because we put a barrier up, but actually that's quite an important point. And then on top of that is, how do we communicate and the different styles of communication, and we can all be good at that and we can all be very bad at that, and it's about it's about feedback as well, isn't it, and how we get to that point. So really fascinating.
I think that leads on quite nicely really to where we are at the moment, Grace, where you are with Hilton Hotels. Filled a variety of roles there. You've moved quickly. I had a little look about what you're up to. You're employed as a senior revenue manager now.
Indeed, yes.
And you're responsible for £300 million worth of income annually.
Yes, it's a big machine to look after, but I do have an excellent team of 10 revenue managers. They are super bright, super motivated, very committed to drive the business forward. So it's not really only me, but it's mostly about them coming in every morning, doing the hours that they do, and having those conversations with their stakeholders.
That's terrific. And what I'd like to know more about is the work you're doing day to day, and perhaps projecting a bit further forward, so
Yes.
kind of a short-term goal, medium and longer term for maybe your role with Hilton and you yourself personally.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think as a team and as our role as revenue leaders, our ultimate aim is of course to make profit for the company, and to make our shareholders happy that we're making profit for them, and also really gaining as much as we can out of our market share. So once we got that box ticked, I think equally is about looking after each other, about our people. It's also about their career development and how I could support them, because whilst they are super amazing at what they do as revenue managers at the moment, I could really see them. My outlook for them is of course moving on to their next roles. It could be a commercial director, it could be a regional leader. So I'm always there just supporting that career development for them.
And I think picking up on that, what's really interesting you said again is that sort of when we talked about what do you do and how you do it, and your responsibility of revenue and income and the amount of hotels in Europe and teams, you immediately went we rather than I. So let's talk a little bit about that psychology, which I find quite interesting, is that from a leadership point of view, you're in a senior role in head office for Hilton for Europe, based obviously in the UK. And what I'm really interested in is that it's quite powerful what you were saying. There's actually a team of us. We all work together to achieve this. It's not just about me as the leader. Yes, I'm there, but actually that suggests to me that you've reduced any ego. So talk us through a little bit about how you think about that whole team aspect and the ups and downs of how you lead a group of people, because obviously these are revenue managers,
Yes.
which is a great role.
Absolutely, thanks for the question. I think I could link it back to what you said about how we all as individuals have our own different childhood experiences and backgrounds, right? And then when you go into a team and it's a wide mix of their age and their backgrounds, their professional career today. So I think what is really crucial is just really understanding what motivates them as a person. Why are they there? What makes them get up in the morning and do the 8 or 10 hour slog every day? I think it's also important to understand how you as their line manager could really make an impact in their lives, in the office and outside the office, in a very positive way, right? I always said to them when I first started as their line manager is the biggest achievement for me is when you actually finish at 4 o'clock, you never talk to your partner about me. My name should never come up during the weekend. Because I remember when I was young and I was really stressed, I would come home on weekends and basically talk about my boss the entire 2 days. And I don't think that's a good sign, right, of being their manager. But equally as well is being able to know your leadership styles. When do you support them? When do you back off? Okay, because there's also in your team you have people who would need a bit more support, or you would have people who are really good at what they do already. So it's really about finding that balance and working with them. And I think respect is very important as well as trust, because we are human beings. And I think at the end of the day we do start this little family unit, and we know our roles to play. And when that genuine care, respect and trust is there, then I think you're onto that winning secret sauce.
Secret sauce.
Secret sauce.
And what does secret sauce mean? What's your thinking?
Well, Graham, if I tell you, I'm gonna have to kill you.
Oh,
I'm
blimey.
kidding.
Okay. Well, I won't delve any further in on that one. But what's again something you've said there, which is so what you're really saying is, as a leader, know your people.
Absolutely.
Because you talked about what are their motivations, what are their drivers, and what's their likes and dislikes. And would you say as a leader that that's been easy to do that, or has that been quite difficult?
I think it really depends on who you are. If you are, I think, also have that sense of self-awareness and the impact that you have as a person on the people around you. It can be learned, definitely.
Okay.
Some people have this gift that comes naturally to them. But I think this is where, again, training comes in. It's when you actually then learn so much about yourself. I have to say, leadership for me was a journey. I had to, of course, go through some leadership trainings, and part of those trainings is you actually have some feedback surveys from your peers and your bosses, and some were hard to learn about yourself, and some were actually quite complimentary. So you basically are sat there and you think, which ones I am going to take away with me, which ones I am going to work on. And it is a daily, not struggle, but a daily self-development for yourself as well, because for you to really make an impact for your company, it's really about leading your teams and inspiring them, right? I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think
That's a great answer.
It makes total sense, and then just another thought from me. I'm sure Tom's got one as well, but I'm fascinated to hear more about what you're saying with that, because I think sometimes, certainly in my experience, it's harder work to get to know your teams because we're all complex and we're all different, right? And that's the beauty of it. But I value the time to actually spend time to try and understand people and get the best out of them. It doesn't always work, but I think it's a really interesting principle, and it's something you've adapted just off your own back, because you seem to believe in that as well from what you say, which is great. So I just wonder there then how you, as a senior leader, is that how you manage the well-being within yourself, and let's use that word stress or pressure, whatever way you look at it. From your side, to keep you performing, what do you do to make sure that you can get to that point where you can still perform for them?
Definitely looking after your health is very important. I definitely believe in that. Exercise helps, absolutely. I think good nutrition, staying hydrated as well, and lots of rest, where you can as well. And I think also having relationships, fostering those relationships, maintaining them, and having friends or a support system really helps.
Which is superb, and what you've just said, you've just really, and I don't know if you were conscious of this, but that's what the NHS have called the 5 ways to wellbeing, top 5 ways to wellbeing, which is what we talk a lot on when we deliver mental health first aid courses. But surely you believe in that, because you've just reeled that off as that's something so known to
Absolutely.
you, which is incredible. Is that something that Hilton always promote? Is it just something you keep
Hilton
in your
has
mind?
Hilton has been really brilliant about our well-being at work. So I think 2 years ago, we had a brilliant program, and it's still ongoing, called Thrive. So it's really looking after your mind, body, and spirit. And it is this culture that we have now in Hilton, that we look after each other and also our well-being. And it does come as well in my conversations with my teams. How do we look after our health? Because for us to do well in our jobs, or even in our own personal lives, we have to look after our own mind, body, and spirit.
Which is amazing, isn't it? And I think that's back to exactly what we're trying to achieve from a well-being point of view, to get the best out of each other. That indirectly gets the best out of the business, so they can be more productive.
Absolutely.
And if we're least productive because we're not following them 5 traits of well-being, and obviously you've been spinning this morning, so you're doing that, which is great.
Maybe I ate too much pasta yesterday as well.
But you burn it off now, no doubt, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? That you can, we can drive that principle, and everybody has to take their own responsibility for that. It's not just about the organisation; it's about individual responsibility to make sure they're ready to perform, which I think is excellent. Are you gonna?
No, I'm just more interested to hear more, I should say, about what Grace is doing day to day. I mean, we've The people coming in, I'm fascinated by, because everyone's day is different, and it's quite a corporate setup. I would imagine it's a massive company. It's Hilton. You know, to know more about what goes on. Maybe I could give you my starting point. You've got these big assets. You want to maximise the amount of money that you can generate from them. But what day to day? What are you doing to get those big numbers coming in? What do you do to do it? Again,
Great question.
Again, just to bring it back a bit, I go around bothering parents with leaflets telling them how good Kit McGrath is, and it is good. But what do you do to kind of, on such a scale, I find that hard to begin to unravel, so anything from
It is
from that
fascinating now that you mention it, because it just comes naturally to us, I suppose. But I think what helps in our job is having a funnel approach, or having that a big vision, and then you then drill down into the details. So because we worked with revenues and driving profit and market share, we always step back and have a look at the bigger picture. Okay, where are our risks? Where are our opportunities? So that's the numbers side of things.
So you're constantly analysing data,
yes,
numbers,
and making strategic decisions.
Changes within seconds, minutes, right?
And deciding which markets are in trouble. Okay, let's put all our efforts in there, or we look at the markets that are doing okay, and the other markets that are really doing super well. And we're like, okay, how can we maximize our opportunities? So that's where basically all the decisions and all the revenue management tasks are focused on. But that is all well and good if you're looking at your Excel sheets and you know exactly what you want to do. But the biggest stars of our work is our revenue managers, because they are the ones then who are really managing our systems and talking to our general managers and commercial directors to keep that engine moving, right? The prices that you see on booking.com or on our brand website, the type of rooms that come available, these are all managed by our revenue managers. So my day is really divided across, I think, majority about 3 areas. So one is the strategy and the analysis and the decisions that we have to make. And then second would be the people. So I definitely allocate time on that. And then third, I'm afraid to say this, are emails. It's a really big chunk of my time as well.
Really interesting. And we found previous from Tom's research that actually I think it's quite a high percentage, is 25% of time in the workplace is spent on emails, which you do wonder about that, don't you?
I do again. 33% in meetings, 25% emails, 5% being interrupted, and 1% for learning. So that's something we looked at last week. But that again is in line with
There we go.
It's incredible, isn't it? So I wonder if email will become a thing of the past, and messaging or just getting up and speaking to people with confidence is going to drive that, which is really, really good. So and also what you were saying there about data, so you talked a lot about that analysis. I think what's really interesting for me is to ask the question of what sort of skill do you think you have to be able to analyse data so well?
Good question. I think you will have to be analytical and love numbers. It's not only about algorithms and calculations, and Excel sheets. It's being able to read through the numbers and create a story, and also make decisions based on them. Yes, it's not for everyone, as you can see. Some people really enjoy selling our rooms. Some people really enjoy doing the operation side of things, being on the floor, checking in guests, serving our guests. And then we are actually then called the nerds, right? We are behind the computers. We are analyzing trends. We are looking at the past to make better decisions for our future strategies. So being analytical, I think, is one of them, and really enjoying numbers.
You get an enjoyment of finding a story from it, no doubt, and what's going forward. And I think the other aspect of that, which I find quite interesting, is the whole scenario of you're the person that people will either love or hate from a point of view if it's 11:30 or midnight and you're stuck and you need a hotel room and the price is 50 quid or 150 quid and 150 quid and you've got a room free, let me have it please for 50 quid.
We have gotten better. It is about educating as well our colleagues, right? And say, you know, if someone walks in and they really need a room, you know, be empowered to let them stay in our hotel. They're always welcome. Absolutely.
And it's something I never realised, but there was a team of people such as yourself behind who make that fee of that location. I used to think it was just the receptionist stroke site manager, and they could adapt. So I'd always be confused. Why can't you drop the price? I'm here now. You've got a room. You know, do you want to earn some money? But I didn't realise there was a big team of people such as yourself behind it, which I think is incredible.
It's incredible what we do. Revenue management basically is about having your pricing right in terms of the timing at the right time and the right product to the right customer. So, for example, if you have a concert in the Wembley Stadium, you know, so of course it's about supply and demand, and it's about having your availability and the willingness of the people to pay that price. And that's basically how then we really work with our pricing and the type of rooms that we sell, so that we could actually make profit as well.
Fascinating, isn't it? Fascinating role.
It is. It
Very
really
fascinating. I know. And when you look at it, 365 days of the year times 2 years outlook, it's.
So how many hotels are there? Hilton Hotels are there in the UK?
At the moment, I don't know exactly in the UK, but we are basically looking at the moment for the whole of continental Europe, UK and Ireland in our centre. In our head office, we look after about more than 200 hotels that we look after remotely.
Right. Okay. And if I wanted to book a Hilton hotel, how could I get a good deal?
Well, you have to join as a Hilton Honors member, and then you can really avail of fascinating and amazing discounts.
Right, get discounts through that membership.
Absolutely.
And then you sort of talk a bit about what I call dynamic pricing, or so you know, peak times. And out of season, you can get a bargain if you're not tied to certain times a year. And what kind of fluctuations are there in prices?
It really depends. Again, it's about the demand that you have for your market. So, for example, then let's say for Paris, last year they had a Ryder Cup in September. So obviously there was so much demand, so the prices of the rooms were actually quite high. So then when we cycle over that this year, which we do not have the Ryder Cup, then we have to take in the factors of, okay, the demand will not be driven by that event, and it will just be a normal demand that we have in the city, so we just have to price as normal.
And that's what I found fascinating, is that all these sporting, I never put the link between sporting events or societal trends to the decision making of what revenue management is. I really found that difficult, and I'm not sure what our viewers feel either. Everything that goes on, you look at that and you look at how that can actually help grow the business's revenue or drop it the next time around, such as the Ryder Cup that's not going to be there next time around. So there's a lot of work involved in that.
And would kind of you and your team, you look at modelling what might happen? Let's say, I know we're going back maybe 7 years now, but the London Olympics, for example, you can't really look back very easily at year-on-year data for that. You've just got to think, well, how many people might come over, how many people might want to stay in one of our hotels, and hopefully get somewhere near to get as much money as we can without pricing ourselves out the game.
For those one-time big events that we have, we do classify them as outliers, and we do then have our analysis of what went well, what did not go well, what could we have done better. We do a full rounded critique on that, and then should we have again the Olympics in a different city, then we are more than happy to share that information with with the hotels in that market. Sorry, did I answer your question?
You did. I mean, I didn't know whether that would be under your arena, or you'd have another team of people who love data sort of say, this is our prediction, now you price the rooms. And do you have like a four standard point, the price point for a room, or do you do that thing? Now, I've not stayed in a hotel before, if I'm honest, but I know with an average spend in other areas by a customer on the
Yes.
the captive market for buying a lunch in the shops that are there that are paying rent or whatever it might be. So if I got a Hilton hotel room for £1, but coffee was £8.75 or whatever it is, do you build that into
Yes,
your...
we do. Just as you do when you're selling, say, a sandwich,
Yeah.
you have to factor in all the ingredients that goes
Yeah.
in there, the packaging and the whole lot. It's the same as when you're pricing a room as a product. So you have to go into the cost of the room, and also the offerings that you have for the room. And it does definitely fluctuate.
Yeah.
Again, there's different factors that we look at, and we do have incredible systems and tools and reportings that support us in our decisions. This is what we basically call forecasting. So being able to, we say it as having this mystical crystal ball to help us really understand what would be our occupancy on a daily basis to help support the operations people on the ground, right? It's as simple as being able to say to your general manager, okay, for this weekend we're going to be running at 98% for both evenings.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to the staffing is they will then have an idea of how many breakfasts are they going to prepare, how many front office staffing or housekeepers are going to be in there for that weekend to help support the operation.
And I think it's interesting you talk about occupancy, because sometimes less occupancy is more profitable, isn't it? For them reasons, when you're resourcing people and obviously, cleaning and all these other costs associated to it. So I guess the ideal you want is less occupancy but higher revenue.
It really depends on all the seasonality as well. You do definitely have periods where people are going to stay anyway. So why are you going to price yourself lower? They're willing to pay €150, and we know this, from the previous trends. So you would stick to that rate, absolutely. But then we also have seasons where you think that because your market or your competitors drop their rates and they are getting the occupancy and you didn't get any pickup in your bookings, so then you make that decision that, okay, as what the competitors are setting up there, I'm also going to drop that rate. And when you see that movement, then you say, we have made the right decision.
Excellent. Well, I mean, from our perspective, we look at, I think we are novices when it comes to revenue management, myself and Tom, but we are obviously so involved in it. But
yes, obviously.
And it's brilliant to hear your stories. I've heard about it. We've got some things, but we're going to move us on to the next question, the final question before we get into our wonderful quiz. And that question is, let's take a step back now and consider, let's say we've got that 18, 20, 22-year-olds. So think about your own experience at that age and obviously where you see the world now. Think about what skill you would advise that 18, 20, 22-year-old, maybe unemployed or trying to get business, or the 26-year-old, for an example, who's in the workplace, who wants to progress. And then also think about that chief executive officer or managing director or vice president, I know is the term in your world. Is that, what skills would you also recommend they need to survive in the market?
Wow.
Big question.
Powerful questions. I feel like in the hot seat. It really depends, I think, where you are in that life stage in your life, right? From my experience, I think being resilient definitely helped. That whatever life threw at you, you could really still wake up in the morning and go to work. I think that's very important. Equal to that is having that bravery to make big decisions and to really stand by them, so that sense of accountability. And lastly, I think is communication and fostering relationships is very strong, and you do need those people to support you, to bring you to that next stage in your career.
And would you say all the facets you said, communication, resilience, problem solving, decision making, it's all big skill sets, isn't it? Would you say that you would encourage the 18-year-old looking for employment all the way through them different types of individuals, the chief exec? Would you say that's a blanket, we all need to have them skills?
Absolutely, I totally agree. Yes, we do it every day anyway, so you might as well harness that skill in your professional life.
Which is an interesting point, because if you can get to the aspect where everybody in all sorts of levels skill sets, maybe that's how we get more productive.
Well, that's a big one. I mean, there's a lot of training there, and, you know, lots of areas to develop in. Just to bring it back to kind of skills and values before we move on to the Hilton Hotels, they must have some core values, I'm supposing. Can I ask a bit about kind of where they're coming from?
Absolutely. It's really helpful that Hilton actually stand for our values, which is hospitality, integrity, leadership, ownership, and now. So now would be sense of urgency.
Yes. And do apply.
Yes.
And interesting when we talk about values in organisations, in particular the last 5-10 years, a lot of organisations have spent a lot of money on marketing what their values are, or what their vision is, and what they're trying to achieve internally. Sometimes organisations get that really, really well, where the workforce embed that really, really well, and some organisations struggle to connect people to that language, because that's what it is first and foremost, isn't it? But you rattling them off there, it's clearly embedded in you.
Yes.
Are you conscious of how that happened, or is it just you're unconscious about it?
I think because we actually do speak about it, and you know, we breathe these values. It is our, how do I say this? It's our language at work, you know, and when we speak to each other, we touch on, you know, how integrity would impact us, you know, in our decisions. How are we as leaders, having that sense of urgency in the big decisions, accountability or ownership, and ultimately really it's all about hospitality for us, right? Looking after people.
So one of the key messages from you there then, Grace, is exactly that. If you're unaware of what your values are, be it the organisation giving you that space or yourself, what you're saying is understand the values and actually apply them.
Yes,
and that's what
absolutely.
gives you success.
Yes.
I like it.
I
We're,
agree.
we're narrowing down this complexity of culture and organisation development, right?
It's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely, and fantastic questions, guys. Thank you so much.
Excellent. No, thank you, Grace. It's superb. So I think it's time for me and you to relax.
Yeah.
Because we're going to compete against each other. It's the round
The highlight of the podcast.
It's the highlight, which is beat the grit.
Beat the grit.
Okay.
My starting point for this was Graham's face. Because I like to remind him that I didn't need the stick and I can just hold the ears. But he doesn't really. That's it. After that. We just did the questions after that.
Done.
And we've chosen various topics. I spent a lot of time on this.
And just to stress, I have no clue what question is coming,
No,
and neither does
I
Grace.
think very good week for Graham, or very good podcast for first episode for Graham.
Yeah.
3 questions correctly.
Oh,
You should never try and predict behaviour. I've made that. I don't think it's going to be such a good week for Graham.
I actually thought I'd get 0, so we'll
I printed out 50 multiple choice questions. We're going to have a topic area this week, happens to be history.
Ooh.
So,
Buckle up.
Alright, so I'm going to ask Graham, no, I'm going to ask 3 questions each and I'll alternate. I'll give Graham an advantage because I think he'll need it this like I say. Ask you the first question, there might be a tiebreak.
Okay, here we go. Come on.
Graham, which British monarch succeeded Queen Victoria? Was it A. Elizabeth II, B. Edward VI, C. Edward VII, or D. George VII?
I'm going to go with George.
You're going to go with George. You are incorrect.
Oh, I thought I would be.
So-
Shocking it.
So you don't get a point. G.
That's the first point I've lost.
Then GH. What are we here? GH, aren't we? Okay. So you get a go at this same question.
Ooh,
so you
okay.
kind of this is a twist we've not had to deal with before. So you guessed George VII, didn't you, Graham?
I did.
And that was incorrect. So your remaining choices for the British monarch that succeeded Queen Victoria are Elizabeth II, Edward VI, or Edward VII.
Edward VI.
No.
What was
Yes.
the answer?
Not to be
you haven't got
competitive.
this. You haven't got the question right yet.
There's
Graham.
0-0, right?
You celebrated.
Sorry.
This correct answer.
Anyway,
I'll read you the question again in case you've forgotten it. Which British monarch succeeded Queen Victoria and was left with Elizabeth II or Edward VII?
I'm going to have to go with Queen Elizabeth.
Graham. Unfortunately not correct. So, I think, Grace, you're going to get this point anyway. I don't think this is academic now as well. But just for our listeners and viewers, let's go through it. So, Graham is helping Graham's history, which seems to be his Achilles heel. Which British monarch succeeded Queen Victoria? Choices are Edward VII.
Oh, okay, very close, very close.
You're going to go with it, Edward VII?
Yes.
Yeah. Right, and you get first dibs on this question here. Okay. So, Grace, Richard III died at which battle? Was it A. Bosworth Field, B. Barnet, C. Hastings, D. York?
C. Hastings.
I like the confidence. You're not right.
Oh,
anyway. Right, wow. Graham. Richard III died at which battle? You're left with Bosworth Field, Barnet, or York?
I'm going to go with York.
Great. Richard III died at which battle? Was it Bosworth Field or Barnet?
At these.
The A one, please.
The A one.
You're going with A. Bosworth Field?
Yes.
Well done, Grace. 2-0
way.
Grace.
I've heard of it.
Okay.
What? Okay,
Great.
my history teacher wouldn't have been impressed. Come on.
Great.
And he was good, my history teacher.
Just
Clearly not. Clearly not, right? Come on then.
question. Your second question, Graham. Who was the last Viceroy of India? Was it A. Clive, B. George VI, C. Prince Louis of Battenberg, or D. Lord Louis
I'm either going to go Battenberg or Mountbatten, so I'm going to go with Mountbatten.
You're right.
Yes.
Well done, Graham.
There we
Excellent.
go,
Pulling it
well
back.
done.
Sorry. It's 2-1 to Grace, but you've
What?
avoided the
2-1
right.
to Grace?
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was one more.
Carrying
No.
on.
Right, next question. Grace, which English monarch married Eleanor of Antiqueen?
Ooh. And the choices are?
Mispronounced something rotten. Can we cut that bit out? 'Cause I can't read that word and I don't like
Yeah,
a fool.
okay.
Just can't read that word. Right, okay. Different question, because I can't read. Which country did Britain fight in the War of Jenkins' Ear?
Oh, tough questions, huh?
Are there multiple choices?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, it's A. France, B. Ireland, C. Spain, or D. Wales.
Oof.
These are tough, aren't they?
They are. D. Wales.
Graham, which country did Britain fight in the War of Jenkins' Ear? Is it A. France, B. Ireland, or C. Spain?
I'm going to go France.
Grace, which country did Britain fight in the War of Jenkins' Ear?
Oh,
Ireland.
it's
Graham,
Spain.
which country did
Spain
not
or
go?
France?
You points the next one wins.
Really? So what is that?
It's
2-2,
getting
so
ridiculous,
what?
isn't
Come on,
it,
let's do
John?
Let's do it.
Okay, this has got to be Grace's question, I think.
Okay.
Alright,
Yeah.
is it Grace's question?
Go for it.
Alright, I'm going to ask Grace anyway, that may be wrong, but life's not fair, is it? Okay, so here we go. Which King George did Prince Regent become? Is it George IV, George III, George II, or George I?
George the Fourth.
That was said with confidence. And you're correct!
No
Grace,
way!
you're our queen of history for this week.
Congratulations,
That was a
Grace.
tough round. Very
My
well
first
done.
loss.
Superb.
Well
first
done.
loss.
Thank you.
Super stuff.
Excellent. Davis, thank you very much. So
You're
the
welcome.
champion is our lovely guest of today, which is Grace Henebry. Well done, 3-2.
Yeah.
So she's definitely beat the Griff. Thank you, Davis, as always. A
Absolute pleasure.
legend in disguise.
Yeah.
So I think now's a real opportunity just to wrap up. So we're coming to the end, and I think it'd be really good to just get your final thoughts for a moment also on everything we've discussed today, and in particular for our viewers that this might affect is what would be your final message, and then we'll wrap up with a few more things. So over to you, Grace. How would you encapsulate what we've talked about so far today?
First, I just really want to say thanks, Graham. Thanks, Tom, for having the time to speak with me today. Really appreciate it. It was actually quite interesting to go down that hot tub time machine journey that I've had since I was 19. Just really wanted to touch on the importance of how training impacts impacts employees in the workplace, and also the roles that we play as leaders in the companies. Sorry, I'm still really excited from winning that history quiz, but no, I think it's just really important, of how we work with our employees and being mindful of each other, looking after each other, and with that results still at the forefront of why we go into work. it's really all about the people that we work with. Yeah, being there for them, supporting them, may it be by time or by offering them trainings. So yeah, I think that's just where I'm really coming from, and then obviously with pod learning, yeah, it's a really great platform. I would like to also share that Graham has been instrumental as my professional coach, and would really recommend, as of course, Graham and his company Pod Learning. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace, and it's a pleasure having you. And I think hopefully, well, I know that a lot of viewers will really appreciate your journey and what you've done. So for anybody out there who's obviously seen this, make sure you feedback on our YouTube platform so you can give us some comments on what Grace has shared today, which was a brilliant process. So thank you, you've been absolutely amazing, and obviously that's what Pod Learning are here to do, to help individuals or help groups or businesses develop and perform to reach their maximum performance, which I think is great. So moving on, wrapping up to our trusted lieutenant, Mr. Tom Davis. Tom, your thoughts, final thoughts of today's pod?
I think it's been really helpful, and I've been fascinated to hear more about kind of how revenue is generated and managed in a large organisation. And the snapshot I've had today of Hilton is one that has hospitality at the heart of its value system, which I think is terrific in terms of a set of values. One last thing I'd like to ask Grace perhaps is, as a potential new customer to Hilton Hotels, what's the best way of not necessarily getting the best possible deal, but just experience a Hilton Hotel? I mean, do I pick up the phone? Do I go on the website? What do I need to do? I want to have a look.
Is he trying to get a free deal out of it? What is he thinking?
Well, we welcome every guest, so definitely go on our website, hilton.com. We do have an app as well.
Yeah.
Or just pick up the phone and speak to one of our reservations agents, or after the interview, I could talk you through it. We'll get a booking out of you by the end of the day.
I've already sold it. We'll just choose dates for it. But no, that's super. Thank you so much, Grace. It's been great to hear from you today.
Yeah. Excellent. So thank you to both my guests. We've got the trusted lieutenant in Tom Davis. We've got the wonderful Grace Henebry today talking about revenue management, which I think was fantastic. And I think what really came out of it for me today from a people organisation development point, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, what it really comes down to is people, and we've learned how to lead people and how to get the best out of people. A lot of that is through relationship building, from what Grace was telling us, from collaboration. Communication seems to keep cropping up again. So why do we want to bother doing this? Well, we want to do this for the point of view of businesses can actually be more profitable and more efficient and more productive, and therefore we can be one of the most productive countries in Europe, which I think is a key driver. So thank you very much for viewing and listening. Again, as always, we would welcome your feedback via YouTube channel, and just make sure you put your name in there. It would be great, and we'll collect all that information with time to go. So finally, thank you from me. Davis, last words?
Last words. Well, another takeaway for me, again, is when I asked Grace where she'd like to be, and talked a bit about direction, but it was great to hear talking about the people who kind of you're leading. You talked about them, where they're going to go next, and that's something that I've not considered before. So I'll certainly try and look beyond trying to get people to work in a certain way, maybe a higher level of thinking than what you've said there. How can I help that person get to where they need to be?
Yes.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Excellent. And until next time,
bye.
see you soon.